Chapter 3 The Extended Sleepover. Now what? The words of Melissa Wolfer. We had a diagnosis that had not impacted our lives significantly for 11 years, but now things were changing. How can my extremely talented and wonderful husband adjust to his life to fit what his body can handle? Jason did not just want to sit at home. First, we tried vocational rehabilitation. Surely they could help him adjust, modify, and move on. However, when the condition was explained fully, that he may not be able to walk, coordinate his arms, and yes, his speech might be affected, there was not much that they could do. So he made the best of the time available, and Jason volunteered for hospice. He had some setbacks as he tried to navigate two different organizations and plan for the future and his role within that organization. At the same time, Jason became involved with and eventually led the Albany Ataxia Support Group. This was and is a very fulfilling role for him. In addition, he made lots of connections through social media and was featured on a radio program. He became aware of a need for a support group in Portland. So what did he do? He just started one, of course. Things seemed to have settled into routine, volunteering, organizing group, church activities, helping people all over the world through social media, and running the household. It was enough to keep him busy and fulfilled. But, of course, ataxia had to deal another blow. Jason had 3 car accidents within a short time. He decided on his own that it was time to give up his license. We are extremely grateful that no one was injured in these accidents, and Jason wanted to make sure that no one ever was. However, there is always public transportation, friends and family to help get him places, but it was just not the same. Jason's world shrunk yet again. But Jason, being Jason, took it in stride. We made more adjustments and kept moving forward. And now, Chapter 3. When I was a kid, there was nothing that would bring down swift and sure retribution like which I would experience whenever I had the good sense and the foresight to ask my mother if a friend could come over or spend the night, while that friend was standing right there beside me. I don't know how many times she told me she hated when I did this, but I can imagine that if I had scratched little marks into the wall in groups of 5 like a prisoner counting down his days until eventual freedom, I would have had somewhere north of more than a lot. Well, with the luck that I had during childhood, it's easy for me to speculate that after having received a spanking for the first infraction, I more than likely would have gotten caught etching yet another mark into the wall and sent to the woodshed once again. As many times as I had to pull down my pants in the realization of the impending spanking, it's a wonder that I even wore pants at all. Asking my mother this question in the presence of my friends really made her feel as if, in reality, there really wasn't a choice. Unfortunately, I was never able to grasp this simple concept entirely, but I stumbled upon a complete understanding years later when I had my own kids. And the job of picking them up from a friend's house had fallen onto me. Adulthood has also bestowed upon me a full and a very complete and comprehensive understanding of this thing that I heard quite often in my youth. I hope you have kids just like you someday. I did. And I didn't like being asked that question in front of their friends either. I have to give my kids credit, though, and in turn my former child, for at least asking the question, as difficult as it may have been to say no, by pulling some vague excuse out of my back pocket. I did have a choice, even in the face of two sets of puppy dog eyes staring at me. However, this annoying childhood ritual, which seemingly has been passed down from generation to generation, is not even close to the bundle of joy that my SCA has become for me. I mean, I didn't even ask if it could come over. How did it know that I didn't already have plans? It just barged right in, attempting to make itself at home, as if there had been some kind of a play date that had already been arranged. Now, not a day goes by that I don't want to take it out to the woodshed. If I had my way, SCA wouldn't be able to sit down for days. Don't spare the rod whenever SCA is involved, or something like that. I forgot how the saying goes, but it seems to be close. Now, I have a first cousin who is 1 year older than I am, and when I was a kid, we would hang out, and we'd do everything that we could together. We went to separate schools, so we didn't hang out and see each other a lot, but when we did, we were inseparable. During those years, I would have extended sleepovers at his house, often staying for a week or more. His family owned several acres of berries, and so I would spend some of my days helping to pick the harvest, because those were the glorious days of childhood labor. The days when parents could shake their kids out of bed, seemingly just several minutes after they'd sent them kicking and screaming to bed in the first place, and they would feed their blurry-eyed children breakfast, drive them in the family car that had no seatbelts, straight to a factory, a shipyard, a steel mill, or a berry field, and then drop them off with the promise of doing it all over again the very next day. But I've gone a little afield of my subject again, because I wanted to focus on the longer sleepovers. There's quite a big difference between my experiences as a child and that of my kids. Take video games for an example. We didn't have them. The Atari didn't make an appearance until I was nearly in my teens. And even then, our extended video game sessions consisted more of 5 minutes it took to get the machine on, get it all warmed up and ready to play, and then the inevitable parental intervention, which signaled our need to return to forced labor. So I may have exaggerated the severity of the work that was part of the lengthy sleepovers at my cousin's house. We did pick berries for his parents on their farm, but we also had an enormous amount of fun, and I always looked forward to those times. No matter how much fun they were, though, I knew that they were only temporary, that the fun times would eventually come to an end, because they had been scheduled for a beginning and an ending. Everything, it seemed, was supposed to work this way, by looking at the calendar and planning an event. But apparently, SCA didn't grow up that way, or learn that lesson, because not only did SCA not ask me verbally first if it could come over, it didn't even have the consideration to send me a tweet, a text, a Snapchat, a Facebook message, or even a smoke signal beforehand. And what's worse is that now it doesn't even appear to have an end date in mind either. I'm sorry, but I see this as incredibly rude behavior, even for a neurological disease. While I do not believe that SCA deserves the benefit of the doubt or any consideration, I am willing to admit that maybe he just has nowhere else to go. Could it be that possible that he did not leave me alone because no one else wants him? But what makes this disease so sure that I want him? Maybe I already had plans. Maybe it is entirely arrogant of SCA to assume that I want him and that I ought to accommodate him for the rest of my life. Because the fact is, I really, really do not. But he will never know that because he's never taken the time to simply ask the question. He just barged in my life one day, and this I find to be an inexcusable form of conduct. Now, a big event that marked my childhood was the parental note. The permission slip that they would give me, and it was a highly prized possession. And whenever I was able to obtain one, I would smugly wave it around and show everybody. Having the rare and the highly cherished parental note felt pretty much like the carte blanche of my childhood. In reality, the slip of paper just gave me the permission to do certain things on certain days, and only on that day, like get off the bus at a friend's house, or maybe an excuse to miss PE for a day or two. That never stopped me, though, from imagining that it gave me the keys, unlimited privilege, and the physical rights to every candy store within 100 miles. Figuratively speaking, of course. Anyway, the rules were that if you didn't have a note, you weren't going to be allowed to go wherever you wanted or do anything on a whim. Those were the rules. Everyone knew them, and everyone followed them. I mean, I did, and I never had a problem. That is until 24/7 showed up. SCA. What was the first thing I did? I checked, and guess what? No note. I tell you, this guy, apparently he feels that he can completely ignore the norms of society, which I see as utterly rude and unfathomably irresponsible.